The midday heat sat heavy over Hwange National Park. It was the dry season, and the land had turned brittle beneath the sun's relentless glare. Cracks split the red earth in jagged veins, and a fine layer of dust clung to everything: grass, leaves, even the skin. The air didn't move, not a breeze, not a sound, just that choking, perfect stillness. It was the kind of quiet that warned of something coming. Nia moved carefully through the brittle grass, boots crunching softly on the cracked soil. She had been out since early morning, conducting a routine wildlife survey. A young ranger and animal rescue specialist, Nia had earned a reputation for her fearlessness and deep connection to the wild. Out here, she didn't just work with animals, she understood them. She didn't expect to find anything unusual today, but Hwange had its own plans. As she crested a small rise, her breath caught. In the middle of a bare clearing, alone under the unforgiving sun, lay a lion cub. Its fur was matted, a gash ran across its side, and its breathing was shallow, fast and uneven. Flies hovered around the wound, the smell of blood faint but sharp. Nia dropped to a crouch instantly. The cub was young, barely a few months old, and clearly in bad shape. She scanned the horizon, no pride in sight, no mother nearby. That was strange. She reached for her radio to call in a rescue, but then something made her stop. The sand behind her shifted. A low, thunderous vibration began to hum beneath her boots. She turned slowly. On the far edge of the plain, a cloud of dust was rising, moving fast. Dark shapes began to take form: horns, muscle, hooves. A herd of African buffalo. Dozens of them, heading straight toward the clearing. Her stomach dropped. Buffalo were unpredictable, especially during the dry season, when every threat felt sharper. If they smelled blood, they might react with panic or aggression. The lion cub, helpless and wounded, was lying directly in their path. There was no time to wait for help. Nia made her choice in an instant. She tossed the radio aside, slipped off her backpack, and ran toward the cub. As she reached it, the sound of the herd grew louder, closer now, hooves thudding like distant drums. She slid to her knees, carefully cradled the cub in her arms, and rose, holding it tight against her chest. Its body was hot, trembling, weak. Then she ran, not toward the truck, which was parked far across the plain, but sideways, away from the herd's path, toward a thicket of acacia trees that might offer cover. Dust rose around her as she sprinted, the cub limp against her chest, and the thunder of hooves shaking the ground behind her. The silence had shattered, and now, everything was moving. The red dust rose like smoke behind her, thick and suffocating. It curled into the air in angry swirls, pushed by the force of hundreds of hooves pounding the dry earth. The sound was deafening, deep, guttural thuds of weight against ground, and the sharp, explosive huffing of buffalo lungs as the herd surged forward. Blinded by fear, driven by instinct, they were accelerating. Nia didn't look back. She gripped the lion cub tighter against her chest, its small body barely responsive now, breath shallow but steady. Her boots slammed into the dirt, skidding over loose stones and slipping on sun-baked cracks. Each step landed with desperate precision. There was no time to fall, no time to misjudge the ground. But then, she did. Her foot caught a rock buried under dust. Her ankle twisted hard. She stumbled forward and barely caught herself with her free hand. The other still locked around the cub. Her knee hit the ground with a sick thud. And pain shot up her leg. Warmth spread across her shin, blood. Behind her, the sound grew louder. She could feel the herd now. The vibration was no longer beneath her, it was inside her. Pulsing through her chest like another heartbeat. The herd was no more than 30 meters away, masked by a wall of dust and rage. The air itself seemed to shake. Nia's breath came fast, ragged. She didn't scream. She didn't panic. She got up. Her legs screamed with every step. But she didn't stop. She ran again, limping, lunging, dodging thorny scrub bushes and small outcrops of stone. She forced her body forward, driven by the sheer force of will. By the primal truth in her eyes, survival was the only option. The trees weren't far now. A cluster of twisted acacias ahead. Their roots exposed and gnarled. Like the fingers of something ancient reaching from the earth. If she could just make it there. Just a few more seconds. The cub shifted slightly in her arms. Still alive. The herd roared behind her. No longer a sound but a storm. 20 meters. 15. 10. The dust cloud engulfed everything. She could barely see the trees. Barely breathe. Her lungs burned. Her legs barely responded. She dove the last few steps. Sliding behind a thick acacia trunk. Curling her body around the cub. Shielding it. Thorns scraped her arms. The world exploded in sound and dust just beyond her. The buffalo thundered past in a blur, hooves tearing through the earth. Horns slicing the air, eyes wild and unseeing, they charged through the clearing where she'd just been. Not slowing, not swerving, seconds stretched like hours. Then, silence. Nia didn't move. Her heart pounded in her ears. Louder than the stampede itself. Dust hung in the air like fog. Slowly, she lifted her head, still cradling the cub. They were alive. But only just. As Nia ran, lungs burning, pain flaring in her leg. The dust around her seemed to twist into something else, into memory. The heat, the roar of hooves, the thundering chaos, it wasn't the first time she had felt it. 2 years ago, she had been younger then, still new to the park, still learning to understand the rules of the wild. That day, she had watched from behind a rocky outcrop, helpless, as a lioness stood between her cubs and an oncoming buffalo herd. The lioness hadn't run, she had growled, charged, tried to shield her young with her own body. It hadn't mattered. The herd trampled through her like a wave breaking over a stone. When the dust cleared, the cubs were gone, and the lioness, her broken body lay still in the sun. Torn and lifeless, Nia had not moved for a long time afterward. There had been no rescue, no choice, only the brutal, impersonal law of nature at work. She had told herself that she understood, that this was how the wild worked. Survival, instinct, order, but deep down, that image had never left her. And now, as she carried this injured cub through the dust and terror, it returned with sharp clarity. Except this time was different. This wasn't a clash of predators and prey. This wasn't a natural hunt or a territorial fight. The cub hadn't done anything. It had already been wounded. By what? She didn't know yet, but it had been left alone. Bleeding, vulnerable, and now the herd, misreading the scent of blood as danger, was coming to crush what little life remained. This wasn't the wild's balance. This was an accident. And Nia couldn't let that happen again. Her thoughts narrowed, focused, even as her body screamed for rest. She felt the cub's shallow breaths against her chest. Still alive, still worth saving. Then, as if summoned by the weight of her memories, her old mentor's voice echoed in her mind. The man who had trained her, challenged her, taught her the difference between observation and intervention. He had said it to her once. Quietly, without drama. When you save a life in the wild, you are not playing God. You're pushing back, just a little, against the cold indifference of nature. With a small act of human grace. She had never forgotten those words. She hadn't always acted on them, but today, she would. Because this life mattered, not to the herd, not to the law of the savannah, but to her. The cub's eyes fluttered open for a brief second as they reached shelter. And Nia held on, not just to him, but to that belief, that sometimes, compassion has a place in the wild. Just as Nia's legs began to buckle and her vision blurred from dust and exhaustion, a piercing sound cut through the chaos, the high, urgent wail of a truck horn. She turned her head, barely able to focus, and saw it, a pickup truck speeding toward her from across the plain, tires kicking up red dust in wild spirals. Her emergency signal had reached them. Someone had seen the GPS alert, and they were coming fast. The herd was nearly on her now. The rumble behind her felt like the earth itself was cracking open. The trees offered little more cover. Her grip on the lion cub never loosened, even as her muscles began to fail. The truck swerved to a halt just meters from where she stood. A voice shouted her name, familiar. Her colleague behind the wheel, reaching across the door, eyes wide with urgency. Nia didn't think. She bolted the last few steps and threw herself and the cub into the bed of the truck. Just as the first buffalo broke through the dust behind her, the engine roared. The truck peeled away, tires spinning, and the world behind them disappeared into a wall of dust and thunder. The herd shrieked in frustration, hooves stomping, horns slicing the air, but they were too late. They had missed her by seconds. In the back of the truck, Nia collapsed onto the metal floor. The cub still pressed to her chest. Its breath was shallow but steady. She looked down, blood smeared her arms. Her leg throbbed. Her skin was caked in sweat and dust. But they were alive. She wrapped herself around the cub, shielding it from the wind and bouncing of the escape. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline finally burning out. The sound of the stampede faded behind them, and for a long moment, there was only the sound of the engine, and the soft, ragged breathing of the little lion that refused to die. At the makeshift veterinary station on the edge of the reserve, the lion cub lay curled on a padded mat under soft light. A saline drip hung beside him, and his wounded shoulder had been cleaned, stitched, and bandaged. His breathing was steady now, no longer shallow, no longer desperate. Nia sat just outside the glass partition, her body still aching. Her shirt was torn, her leg freshly bandaged, and her hands stained with dry blood and dust. She leaned silently against the doorframe, watching through the glass. Inside, the cub opened his eyes. He didn't move, but his gaze found her, soft, quiet, unblinking, not afraid, not wild in that moment. Just present. A silent thread stretched between them. Fragile but real. Nia didn't look away. She could still feel the tremble in her legs from the run. still hear the stampede's roar echoing in her bones. But here, in this stillness, something in her settled. A colleague passed behind her, pausing briefly at her side. "You really think it was worth it?" he asked in a low voice. "Risking your life for one injured cub?" Nia didn't turn. She kept her eyes on the lion. A faint smile crossed her face. "Yes," she said, "because today, I didn't run from the wild. I ran for it." The sun was setting outside, its golden light spilling across the cracked earth of Hwange, casting long shadows over the red soil and thorny brush. The park was quiet again, the herd long gone. But here, in this small outpost, the final light of day glinted through the glass, reflecting in two sets of eyes, one human, one lion. And in that quiet, fragile moment, life had won.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.